So I haven't really known how to approach making videos during this very strange time in the world, but I've gotten a few messages from people and they're saying, hey, if it's the apocalypse right now, at the very least could you send over some good music to listen to? And that's when the wheels started turning in my head. If the world was ending, which it probably isn't, but you know, stay safe, wash those hands, I wonder what album I would listen to the most. What project would feel the most appropriate for the end of mankind? So without further ado, here are a few of the albums that I think fit that description, and I'll give my reasoning why. First up, we have Stranger in the Alps by Phoebe Bridgers. I was listening to this album a lot recently anyway, but I think it captures a lot of how I've been feeling during this time of isolation and social distancing. This is a gorgeous, alternative, sort of emo indie rock folk adjacent album, and in my eyes it's all about the idea of relationships. Not necessarily all romantic, but those are obviously a big focus on the album. I just think that this project is about how we as individuals make connections with everyone around us, with friends, family, former lovers, strangers, and the list goes on. When I started writing the idea for this video, it was kind of a joke, but the more that I talk about this album in reference to this specific time in the world, it hits a lot harder than I expected it to. Phoebe has a very pretty, hypnotic voice, and her lyrics are totally raw, totally transparent. And with pretty much every track on here being about a specific relationship with somebody, it's easy to put yourself in her shoes and start swapping out the focus of each song with somebody in your own life. She's discussed in several interviews how she wrote these songs not with an idea of, oh, this is how I would feel if this happened to me. No, this album is blatantly autobiographical. So for the opening track Smoke Signals, when she's alluding to a long-distance relationship, there was a very specific person in mind. This leads to more detailed, more intimate stories, and honestly, I think it's more relatable too. When I hear a top 40 radio song that sounds so general, so vague, and they're just begging you to insert yourself into the lyrics, sort of like what Bo Burnham made fun of on his song Repeat Stuff.
I love your eyes and their bluish, brownish, greenish color.
That fill-in-the-blank style of generic songwriting does the opposite of what they think it does. I'm much more likely to identify with something that is detailed and well-written, even if the lyrics don't match my experiences exactly. So on Smoke Signals, when Phoebe sings, "One of your eyes is always half shut, something happened when you were a kid, I didn't know you then, and I'll never understand why it feels like I did. None of my ex-girlfriends had an eye that was always half shut because something happened when they were a kid, but this intimate, raw songwriting actually gets me involved in the music. It gets my brain working, and I start picturing specific quirks and idiosyncrasies of people that I've been close to. The song Funeral is absolutely phenomenal, and the relationship in this track is with someone that she doesn't even really know. Phoebe's gonna sing at the funeral for a kid around her age, and it's the idea that even though that person was a stranger, she still feels some kind of bond with them, and she's empathetic for everyone involved.
So sad when I think too much about it, I can't breathe.
Georgia is a track that Phoebe wrote during her teenage years, and it's about an ex-boyfriend from that time. The relationship made her feel very self-conscious, and she's singing about one specifically anxiety-inducing night.
Will you take me?
And the song Would You Rather is a duet with Connor Oberst of Bright Eyes. The relationship in this song is about her and her brother, and it's the process of them navigating through a tough situation together.
To find out.
I'm a can on a string.
So whether it's you thinking about an ex, a family member, somebody you're currently dating, some kid you used to know from school, whatever, I think this album will be therapeutic for everyone that misses real human connection right now. The second album I'm picking is The Archandroid by Janelle Monae. If we're talking about the world changing in a dramatic way, why not listen to a sci-fi inspired concept album which was inspired by a 1927 dystopian classic film? It would be no surprise to anyone right now if I say that Janelle Monae is the definition of an artist. She's extremely talented in multiple fields, her music is incredible, she's acted in great movies, movies, her stuff is always pretty deep and introspective, and I could go on and on. And way back in 2010, when nobody really knew who she was still so endlessly creative, which I think is really cool. With a lot of musicians, they might start off a little messy, and as they progress, they're refining their craft and there's more room to innovate. You've grown as an artist, maybe now you have the resources that'll let you experiment a little bit more, whatever. But not Janelle. Right out of the gate with her debut studio album, she was doing this conceptual tale of an android in a dystopian future who was finding love and self-realization. There's time travel, secret societies, oppressive dictatorships, and so on. The protagonist of the story represents a mediator between those who are free and those who are not. The people who have wealth and prosperity and those who don't. The ArchAndroid is looking to bridge that gap to free the innocent citizens of Metropolis, with the end goals being love and freedom for all. The main sort of message of the album is one of equality. The ArchAndroid represents minorities everywhere. She's standing up for them and giving a voice to the voiceless. So now that we've talked about the lyrical themes of the album, good God, I could talk about the composition of this thing forever. Eclectic is the perfect way to describe Janelle's tastes and influences, because this album has a little bit of something for everyone. If we want to speak very generally about how to categorize the whole thing, sure, probably neo-soul with some pop influences. But if you're looking at each individual track, we can go so much deeper. There's synth pop, there's hip hop and rap, there's classical music, there's some folk elements, there's big band jazz stuff, we get a little punk rock, there is so much funk on here, and do you get what I'm saying? It sounds like I just started naming every single genre off the top of my head, and that's pretty accurate when describing what we get throughout the ArchAndroid. It's over an hour in length, and it kind of needs to be. There's an epic story being told. Janelle touches on every musical genre of the last couple hundred years, and somehow, some way, it works. Favorite songs are the very theatrical Come Alive, the big hit of the album, Tightrope, and the smooth as can be Oh Maker.
Oh Maker, tell me, did you know this love would burn so?
Next up, we have the album Pure Comedy by Father John Misty, and yeah, I'm guessing you might have seen this one coming. If Stranger in the Alps was an intimate look at the human connection and a therapeutic way to cope with social distancing, if the ArchAndroid was a brilliantly creative way to imagine a dystopian future and a genuine reason to remember to be a good person in these hard times, Pure Comedy is one arrogant yet genius perspective saying, hey, our world kinda sucked anyway. Father John Misty, aka Josh Tillman, is an indie folk rock singer who is a very opinionated individual. On July 22nd, 2016, Father John Misty went on stage at a festival and just kinda ranted about how stupid and sad everything is for a solid 6 or 7 minutes. He eventually plays a couple songs, then walks off stage early. In his rant, he talks about how the entire entertainment system corrupts our minds from a young age, we're all mindless consumers, nobody has any free will, and so on. He discusses how evolution brings us into the world half-formed, and how we have to be very lucky in order to have people in our lives to tell us what's actually right and wrong. In Josh's perspective, entertainment fills in all the gaps in our minds of what our parents don't tell us. And you may be wondering, why is he doing this instead of playing music at a music festival? And that's sort of the paradox of Father John Misty. So he gets paid to go perform music at a festival, and instead he's ranting to a crowd about how entertainment is garbage. It's really weird to watch because, you know, he's an entertainer, and because he's famous and the crowd is full of his fans, they're gonna root for him no matter what he says, which probably goes against everything he's saying. And with him, I'm always in this endless cycle of agreeing with him, but I also have to recognize that the hubris of him thinking he knows best is a very conceited, convoluted idea. About a year after this incident, Father John Misty released the album Pure Comedy, and it's more or less a very fine-tuned, brooding, contemplative version of that rant. For an hour and 15 minutes, we get to hear Josh's takes on why why our world, our culture, and most specifically our entertainment is the scum of the earth. Everything from our current political leaders to what we watch on television and everything in between, the major lyrical talking points on the album are fame, technology, social media, a very opposing view to Phoebe Bridgers' takes on human connection, and so on. The following is an excerpt from an email to his fan club in Josh's own words. Pure comedy is the story of a species born with a half-formed brain. The species' only hope for survival, finding itself on a cruel, unpredictable rock surrounded by other species who seem far more adept at this whole thing, and to whom they are delicious, is the reliance on other, slightly older, half-formed brains. This reliance takes on a few different names as their story unfolds, like love, culture, family, etc. Over time, and as their brains prove to be remarkably good at inventing meaning where there is none, the species becomes the purveyor of increasingly bizarre and sophisticated ironies. These ironies are designed to help cope with the species' loathsome vulnerability and to try and reconcile how disproportionate their imagination is to the monotony of their existence. Fun, right? So this is my whole thing with this musician and this album. When I'm listening to these songs and the lyrics, I'm 100% in. I agree with what he's saying. I think it's a beautiful tragedy of an album, and it's the sort of thing where I'm like, oh my god, everyone needs to listen to this as soon as possible. But when I actually start talking about the album, that's when I go back to this conundrum of me second-guessing everything surrounding it. At this point of the process, the irony of a successful entertainer telling me that entertainment is trash is not lost on me. The audacity of this guy to say what he says on this album is remarkable. There's something pompous about it to me. Patronizing is a word that comes to my head, but then I go back and listen to it and I remember how smart I think he is at the same time. At the very least, this dark, self-absorbed, existential crisis of an album is meant to make you think, and with me at least, it's certainly done its job. The title track, Pure Comedy, is a depressing stroke of genius, and it is one of the best depictions of life in a song that I will ever hear.
Oh, it's like something that a madman would conceive.
Ballad of the Dying Man is this meta look at social commentary and how you may think you're contributing to change in the world, but actually you probably aren't.
Just think of all the overrated hacks running amok.
And In 20 Years or So is a ballad to how little we as humans matter in the grand scheme of things.
There's nothing to fear.
For more recommendations, here's a little rapid-fire list to help keep you busy during quarantine. King Crimson's In the Court of King Crimson is a must-know classic concept album, and fun fact, it was featured in Alfonso Cuarón's dystopian sci-fi film Children of Men. The album Year Zero by Nine Inch Nails takes a look at a dystopian year 2022, and hey, we're almost there, so that might be fun. If you ever want to try and have a more understanding perspective with death, I suggest Mount Erie's A Crow Looked at Me, or Carrion Lull by Sufjan Stevens. And if watching this video bummed you out a little bit too much, throw on some Quiero Quiero Bonito, or maybe Songs in the Key of Life. Vampire Weekend Self-Titled always puts me in a good mood, Since I Left You by the Avalanches, and the list goes on. I'm super happy and excited to be back making videos. Leave suggestions for stuff that you might want to see because I want to keep you guys entertained during all of this, and thanks for watching. Hey, thank you for watching that video. If you want to support the channel, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. You can follow me on social media at RenshawHS. You can buy my merch, support my Patreon, and thank you again. I'll see you soon.